pit crew right now. He's kind of slow this morning. Anytime I test drive these things, we're going.
Whenever you're ready.
When Bitchin' Rides disappeared, one question refused to go away. Where was KevDog? For years, Kevin Sheely was the fabricator viewers trusted to turn Dave Kindig's wild ideas into real cars, and his personality made him just as memorable as the builds themselves. Then, the cameras stopped, the television appearances ended, and fans were left trying to separate rumor from reality. Did Kevin actually leave Kindig Design? And what was his life really like after the show? Join us as we uncover the truth behind Kevin Sheely's journey. The truth behind Kevin Sheely. Viewers could hardly watch an episode without seeing Kevin Sheely move through the Kindig shop, work on a build, joke with the crew, or stand beside Dave Kindig. He was not the man whose name appeared on the building, but after years of watching the series, it became difficult to separate the Kindig experience from the people who made the shop feel familiar, and KevDog was one of them. What made Kevin's presence especially interesting was that television did not create his connection to Kindig. Television simply made that connection visible to a much larger audience. Kindig's official biography says Kevin has worked for the company since 2004, while the series itself did not premiere until 2014. That means he had already spent a decade inside the business before viewers ever saw him on television. When the series premiered, Kevin was not simply listed as another cast member. His official role was shop foreman, the same title attached to his name in the show's credits. That mattered because it meant that the man viewers came to know as KevDog was already an established part of the operation before the cameras arrived. His television presence eventually grew beyond the main series too. In 2019, Kevin and Dave appeared together in Beyond Bitchin' Rides, a 9-episode companion series that looked back at the previous 5 seasons of Bitchin' Rides. The pair discussed favorite builds, engines, projects, and even which member of the shop was the better driver. The existence of that series revealed something about how naturally Kevin had become part of the franchise's identity. However, something unexpected happened that changed the way things worked. The television window closed. After more than a decade on screen, Bitchin' Rides reached its 11th and final season in 2025. For viewers who had spent years watching Kevin inside the Kindig shop, the disappearance of new episodes created an obvious question. Where was KevDog now? At first glance, the answer seemed simple. The show was over, so perhaps Kevin had moved on too. But that assumption overlooked the most important part of his story: Kevin's connection to Kindig. It began long before television, and the end of a television series did not automatically mean the end of the career that existed before the cameras. So what really happened to him after Bitchin' Rides ended? Fans began to question where he had gone. However, to answer that, we have to look past the television personality and back to the man whose career at Kindig had already been underway for years before anyone was watching. Life before the fame. Long before viewers knew Kevin Sheely as KevDog, he was already immersed in Utah's custom truck scene. Kevin was building mini-trucks when he began crossing paths with Dave Kindig at car shows around Salt Lake City. Dave was then known for his work with Volkswagen vehicles and was working in the automotive industry. The two gradually became friends through their shared interest in custom vehicles. Later accounts of their relationship describe those early encounters as the beginning of a partnership that eventually reshaped both of their careers. Dave had already started moving toward his own business. In 1999, Dave and his wife, Charity Kindig, launched Kindig Design, initially operating from a much smaller space before the company expanded into the facility it occupies today. Dave also worked at High Performance Coatings, or HPC, where he developed industry connections and continued to build his reputation as a designer and custom car builder. However, Kevin's route into the business was less straightforward. According to accounts of his early career, Dave helped Kevin get a position at HPC, but Kevin continued spending his free time around Dave's garage. One project became particularly important to the story. Kevin was working on an Isuzu space cab that he and Dave called Bone Collector, with Dave contributing artwork to the truck. Kevin became so absorbed in the project that it eventually played a part in the moment that changed his employment. In 2004, Kevin reportedly arrived about 15 minutes late for work after spending the previous night working on Bone Collector. He lost his job at HPC, but the setback lasted only briefly. Dave offered him a position at Kindigit Design, bringing Kevin into the young company at a crucial point in its development. Kevin was not simply joining a finished operation, as Kindigit was still building its reputation, its customer base, and its place in the custom car industry. Within a few years, the company was already collecting major recognition. In 2007, Kindigit won its first SEMA GM Design Award for a 1937 Chevrolet Coupe, an early sign that the shop was becoming more than a local custom car business. As the shop grew, Kevin grew alongside it. As the shop foreman at Kindigit, he took responsibility for the 27,000-square-foot facility while specializing in chassis and suspension. The company also describes him as a jack of all trades, reflecting how broadly his work extended across the shop. He was not limited to one stage of a build, and his long hours and hands-on approach became part of what made him valuable to the growing operation. His own projects followed the same custom truck routes that had brought him into Dave's orbit in the first place. Kindigit says Kevin has personally built 4 custom sports trucks and is working on a 5th. He also belongs to the Salt Lake chapter of Severed Ties Truck Club, keeping him connected to the truck culture that shaped his automotive interests before Kindigit ever became a television brand. By the time Kindigit was established, Kevin was no longer simply the guy who had been given a chance after losing his job. He had become part of the small team helping turn Dave's designs into finished vehicles, and that relationship eventually carried them from a Utah shop to a national television audience. The job at Kindigit may have started with a second chance, but Kevin quickly proved he was meant for much more. As the years passed, his role inside the shop grew, putting him closer to the heart of Kindigit's biggest builds. The man behind the builds. Kevin Shealy's importance at Kindig. It was not simply that he could work on cars. Dave Kindig has described him as his right-hand man and said Kevin had a role in keeping track of what was happening across the builds. In the same interview, Dave joked about Kevin's on-screen alter ego, explaining that the man viewers saw without his trademark baseball cap was Calvin, while KevDog was the version with the flat-brimmed cap. Beneath the joke was a serious point. Kevin had his finger on the pulse of the shop's projects. That responsibility became particularly visible whenever a project involved something outside the ordinary. In a 2022 episode, for example, the shop took on a semi-hauler, and Kevin was placed at the center of the project because of his experience with trucks. The episode description specifically identifies him as the shop's resident truck expert and had him taking the lead on the design and overseeing the build. His involvement also extended beyond building Kindigit's customer cars. Kevin became one of the people representing the company at major automotive events. Kindigit calls him its mother trucker because he drives the company's rig to and from shows across the country. That role also puts him on the road with the very vehicles the shop has spent months creating, connecting the work inside the building with the events where those finished vehicles are displayed. Nevertheless, Kevin's role was not confined to the workshop. In 2021, Kevin and Dave were given another unusual responsibility when they became judges at a major car show. Instead of presenting a Kindig-It vehicle for someone else to evaluate, the two had to select the top 10 builders from hundreds of cars. The episode, Meet Judge Kevdog, turned Kevin from participant into evaluator, showing another side of his standing within the custom car world. By then, Kevin had become much more than the familiar mechanic standing beside Dave on television. However, being one of the people who held Kindig-Its together came with a side that viewers rarely saw. As the shop grew and the cameras arrived, Kevin was carrying far more than the work that made it onto the screen. The pressure behind the scenes. What viewers saw on Bitchin' Rides was only one part of Kevin Shields' working life. There was the side of Kevdog that television could show, but never fully capture. The cameras were there to document Kindig-It design, but the shop still had customers waiting for their vehicles, deadlines to meet, and builds that could not simply stop because a television crew had arrived. In fact, Dave Kindig had made that a condition of the show from the beginning. He had previously worked in television production where cars were taken apart and rebuilt for different camera angles, and he did not want that at Kindig-It. His agreement with the production company was that the crew would essentially be a fly on the wall, capturing the work without disrupting the actual builds. That meant Kevin was not stepping away from his regular responsibilities whenever the cameras came on, but he was still running the shop while appearing on television. A 28-minute account of Kindig's production process reported that cameras were at the facility 3 to 5 days a week throughout the year. Then there was the television schedule. A scene might need to be filmed again, a conversation repeated, or a particular stage of a build captured from another angle. But the vehicle still had to move forward. The cameras could document the process, but they could not deliver the car to the customer. That responsibility remained with the people inside the shop, including Kevin. The workload could also become complicated because Kindig-It was handling several vehicles at different stages simultaneously. A 2024 Hot Rod tour of the facility described the shop as a highly organized operation with numerous builds underway, each marked with design sketches and notes. Customer vehicles took priority, which even affected Kevin's own projects. His white Suburban was described as a when-I-can-get-to-it project because customer work came first. That pressure was visible in the projects that made it onto the show. In one Bitchin' Rides build, Kevin was identified as the shop foreman, while the crew transformed a 1965 Mustang Fastback with a new chassis, suspension, Coyote engine, and other modern components. His job was not simply to stand beside the vehicle and explain what was happening. He was part of the team responsible for getting the finished car to work. While viewers saw the jokes, test drives, and conversations with Dave, Kevin was still dealing with the less glamorous side of custom car building. Now, after more than a decade, the series eventually reached its final chapter, and the television world that had become such a major part of Kevin's life was about to change. When the cameras went dark. For more than a decade, Bitchin' Rides gave viewers an unusually close look at the work happening inside Kindig-It design. By the end of its run, the show had become far more than a series about custom vehicles. It had become the way many viewers knew Kindig-It in the first place. The show's run was remarkably long. Season 11 premiered on March 12, 2025, and consisted of 14 episodes, with the finale, Stay Bitchin', airing on June 11th. Kindig-It lists the series at 11 seasons and 167 episodes, making the final season the end of a television run that had lasted more than a decade. But the ending was not caused by some dramatic event inside the shop. In fact, the explanation came from outside Kindig-It. Warner Media and Discovery merged in 2022 to create Warner Bros. Discovery, and the company subsequently began consolidating its streaming businesses. MotorTrend Plus was shut down at the end of March 2024, with much of its programming moved to Discovery Plus and Max. Kindigit later explained that this broader restructuring affected MotorTrend programming and ultimately led to Season 11 becoming the final season of Bitchin' Rides. That explanation mattered because it changes the question surrounding Kevin. Dave Kindig also disclosed it explicitly in his message on November 20, 2024, that the show was wrapping up, but it was not goodbye to Kindigit Design. He also pointed viewers toward what was coming next, saying the company had plans beyond the series. And the final season itself did not look like a show quietly disappearing. It still featured major projects and the familiar Kindigit crew. One episode even sent Dave and Kev to Adelaide, Australia for the Velo Adelaide 500 and to judge the Kindig Custom Car Show, which featured vehicles across several categories. Another took them to the Adirondack Nationals in New York. The series finale then featured Dave, Kevdog, and Will Lockwood looking back at a decade of builds and moments from the show. So when the last episode aired, what disappeared was not the work, the shop, or necessarily the people viewers had spent years following. What disappeared was the television series that had placed those people in millions of living rooms. So the end of Bitchin' Rides did not mean the end of Kevin's story at Kindigit. With the television chapter behind him, the focus shifted to what Kevin was doing after the show and whether he had remained part of the company that had defined so much of his career. Where Kevin is now. For viewers who lost track of Kevin after Bitchin' Rides ended, it would be easy to assume that he had moved on from Kindigit Design. But the company's current records point in the opposite direction. Kindigit still lists Kevin Sheila as its shop foreman. There is no indication on the company's current team page that his role ended when the television series did. His activity after the show provides even more evidence. At the 2025 SEMA show, Kevin appeared publicly alongside Dave Kindig, including a scheduled appearance at the Dynamat booth and a SEMA live presentation on the show floor. SEMA also continued to identify him as the person running Kindigit's 27,000-square-foot shop, rather than as someone who had simply been part of a television series that was no longer airing. That visibility has continued into 2026. Kindig. Its official booking page currently lists Kevin as an appearance option, alongside Dave Kindig, meaning fans and event organizers can still request him for appearances. The company's 2026 calendar also has Dave and Kevdog traveling together with the Kindigit rig, including the birthplace of Route 66 Festival in Missouri, the Triple Crown of Rotting in Tennessee, and Cruisin' the Coast in Mississippi. But there is another important change in Kevin's post-Bitchin' Rides world. Kindigit has not simply stopped showing its work. In January 2026, the company launched Kindig All Access, an official YouTube series designed to take viewers deeper into the actual build process. Instead of compressing an entire project into a handful of television episodes, the new format follows individual stages of a build, from design and fabrication to bodywork, paint, assembly, and road testing. Kindigit says the channel allows the crew to spend more time on the details and share more of the process directly with viewers. One of Kevin's most personal projects was a vehicle called Leftovers, a custom build that shows what happens when he gets to create something for himself. Rather than starting with a single vehicle and simply modifying it, Kevin assembled parts from different GM platforms, including a GMC body and doors from a Cadillac Escalade. The result is a one-off vehicle that carries his own ideas. The project also took years to complete, But by 2025, Leftovers was finally ready for its public debut at SEMA, where it appeared as Kevin's personal creation. For someone who spent much of his career helping bring other people's dream cars to life, Leftovers gave KevDog the chance to put his own stamp on a build from beginning to end. This is significant for anyone trying to understand what happened to Kevin, because his disappearance from a television schedule did not mean that his work disappeared. What changed was much simpler. For more than 10 years, viewers had a regular television window into Kevin's working life. Once that window closed, they stopped receiving the same steady stream of footage. Kevin, however, was still there. The mystery was never really about where KevDog had gone, but about why viewers could no longer see him in the place where they had become used to finding him. Do you think Kevin should continue working with Kindigit, or should he eventually create his own platform to showcase his work and ideas? After Leftovers, what do you think his next big custom build could be? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.